Alright, so I did one of these banner guides for the Valentine's event, but I haven't done one for the White Day one yet. And this is actually a bit interesting because unlike a lot of the other events that splooge out all of these different, just comments, or well, not common, but you guys know what I'm saying. They're not like limited servants where they spew them all out. Unlike all of those, these guys are all going on single rate up. So this is actually one of those chances that it's just like, hey man, did you not pick waiver for either one of your tickets? Well, maybe here's a good chance to go ahead and summon for him. Or if you want someone like Coo Alter, we're going to be talking about that in today's video because this is a bit different. Usually I advise going for servants like these on rate ups because usually they're on rate up with somebody else, and that means they're splitting the rate up with the other character. And that generally gives you a lower chance of getting the servant you want. Like, let's say, in this scenario, if it was a double rate up, I think generally you'd be pretty good because one of the servants is Yugioh Alter and the other one would be someone like Waver or Coo Alter ideally. But in normal scenarios, it's like, oh, well, Nero Bride's going on rate up with like Tamamo or something. And you're like, and maybe you're not like too gung-ho about Nero Bride or something. And you're like, I really want Tamamo. In those scenarios, the rate up is split between the two 5-star servants, but thankfully, because DW has this absolute, I don't want to say misinterpretation of how strong Yugioh Alter is, but they almost just do have a misinterpretation of how strong he is. The fact that it almost took them 3 years to put him out, and then now they don't want to put him on double rate up or anything, is both a good and weird thing for them. But talking about DW, or I guess Lasengo now, not really understanding their own power level of their own servants, that's a whole topic for a different time. In today's video, we're going to kind of talk about which servants I think are worth going for, because this is a good chance to snag some of them, because a lot of these servants here are actually pretty good and can definitely help out your box. But before we begin, this should be going up on Saturday, which means today at 5 p.m. EST. My videos usually go up at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. EST, meaning in 7 hours, I will be going live on my Twitch. That is the Twitch, not YouTube. I will be going live to host the Master Duel tournament. I would love to see as many of you guys show up as possible. I'm going to be commentating over the entirety of the tournament. It'll be a big, thicky stream because there's going to be about 7 rounds. So we'll be there for a fat minute. There will be drinks involved, so I assure you it will be a good time for everyone involved. Come out there, chill, hang out, let's spend our Saturday nights together. No flushed emojis. Anyway, with all that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of these servants. So obviously, we're not talking about these guys because those are like, it's obvious. Someone for Yugioh Alter if you can. But some of the first standout one, I guess we'll just go in order, is Coo Alter. This guy is one of the best solo servants in the entire game. The only person that really, I think, personally, gives him a run for his money is Chi Huang. And that's because Chi Huang not only can basically just be invincible all the time, he's capable of outputting some pretty decent damage. He has the battery to make him even more consistent. And as a solo servant, he is a ruler, meaning he takes even less damage from a lot of these people. Now, Coo Alter is almost the inverse of that philosophy, where instead of taking the ruler attribute to make sure he takes less damage, he takes the berserker attribute to make sure he can solo against anyone that's not a foreigner, and even then he might be able to solo some of those battles, because his whole goal is to do a solo, but to do it as fast as possible because he is a berserker. Probably the most standout skill here is the second skill with the double evasion. He is packing a guts as well if your evasion line gets broken, but notice it is not limited by turn. So in theory, you could loop this. A very common strategy would be to put on something like Volumen Hydrogyrum or whatever it's called, the Caneth one. The one that gives you 3 hits of invincibility at the start of the battle, because these stack together and the invincibilities are used first. So you can actually start prepping your second cooldown of the evasion skill. So like, if you have stuff like this, if you have like Volumen, it makes Coo Alter's second skill just absolutely broken, right? It makes it so good. The 14% defense, you might be thinking that's a little low, but if you come to his overcharge over here, he gets 30% bare minimum when he fires his NP. And then they gave him this ability on his NP to not only make it hit harder with the buff to the damage, but they also had it to basically, he can't be stomped as a solo servant. He's just gonna rip all the buffs off people, and he just can't be stalled out at all. Because that was like the one weakness of Coo Alter, is that you could potentially get stalled out because he's missing one extra dodge, and sometimes that could shaft you. But now that he's got that, he is virtually unstoppable. If there was a servant that would definitely make your box a lot stronger, it is Coo Alter. Because not only does he like the solo, but he works very well with people like Tamamovich, who would love to give him all of these fat buffs, and then he just becomes an insane boss-killing servant that, with all the other servants next to him, makes it very hard to actually get to him and start wasting his dodges and whatnot. So Coo Alter, probably one of the top picks, I would say. Everyone from Nemo to Li Xuan, I think these are kind of like okay picks. Like, okay, if we look at Nemo, right, which is, this is probably, some of this is going to offend some people. I know there's going to be people upset in the comments, but Nemo can be a very strong DPS servant. In fact, I will go ahead and I'll open up the damage chart over here to show people that don't know what I'm talking about more of an idea of what I mean by Nemo being an absolute maniac. If you look over here at some of his like special damage mod stuffs, he can get pretty insane, and his damage isn't bad without it, right? That's actually what makes Nemo so good, is that his damage is already really top tier. It's just that he can go even further beyond if you start fulfilling some of his more different conditions. And thankfully, he has a lot of different conditions. As you can see, he wants to fight in water side, void space, fight super large enemies, all that good stuff. So he has the potential to do a lot of damage, and it's not like he's bad. Me saying that I don't recommend, or like these are kind of like okay to summon for, but not the best, doesn't mean I think he's bad, because the same thing can be said about Enkidu. Enkidu over here is also an exceptional solo type servant, because he does some of the most damage in the entire game with his NP, and he's just really thick. Like, he's got like a 10k heal. He is really hard to out once he's on the board. I'm not on the board, I've been playing way too much Yu-Gi-Oh! When he's on the field, right? He has a dodge, he has things to keep himself alive, and again, like I'm saying, he's capable of outputting massive amounts of damage. If he's fighting a divine person, you could potentially stun lock them. If you can get into a good lucky set of hands for your Brave Chain, so you can refund your NP. But I just think Coo Alter is better than like most of the people here. Like, Karn is fine. I think Karn is like a solid like B plus-ish servant, you know, like he's just good AoE servant that also has like a divine niche. Decent batteries, kind of weird at 25%, but he's got things going for him. He's got crit damage, he's got the double buff on for his mana burst, so that stuff is good. Odysseus, I just talked about because he just came out on the NA version of the game. He's kind of just good. Like, that's just what he is. Like, it's kind of how I describe Europa. Like, Europa is just a good AoE buster servant. Odysseus is just a good AoE arts writer. Like, there's no, splitting hairs about it. He's just a good servant. Now, the only problem with Odysseus is that he has a free-to-play variant called Habitrot, who Habitrot is a free NP5, and if you don't mind using this little gremlin, she can pretty much fulfill the same role as Odysseus, at least for farming, if that's why you want Odysseus. If you want Odysseus for more, like, challenge quest comps, or you just think he's really cool, because admittedly, I'm reading the A and Breeze event right now as we're going through it on NA, and I think Odysseus is pretty sick. So, yeah, like, I can understand summoning for him because you think he's cool, or you just want to have him in your Chaldea, but not really a servant that I think is going to increase or like really be a strong value for your box like I think Coo Alter is, because Coo Alter literally just brings immense value to your box. Xiang Yu, also not a bad servant. He kind of like provides his own stars as like this high crit damage servant. Definitely one of those servants that is like massively overlooked. I tried to gas him up a little bit in one of the last videos I did for him, but I guess it didn't really make very many waves for people. Li Xuan, kind of like a burst assassin. He's fine. He's not exceptionally great, but he does do a lot of damage. Like, I would be remorse to say that like he doesn't do damage. Like, he does do the big damage, but he is a burst servant, so you gotta kind of know what you're going into. Then we get to Taigong, and Taigong's kind of broken. I don't know if you guys remember, he did come out a couple months ago, like around like, what was it, December? He came out a little bit ago. I'm sure people are kind of forgetting what this guy does, but he is like an insane support. He just neuters divine and demonic people, like it just obliterates them, as well as having team utility with the skill seal. My boy has his own fat battery. It's a 50% battery, mind you, because this also applies to him. He gives himself 30%, and then he gives everybody, because it doesn't say excluding himself, he gives himself a 50% battery, and then just charges theirs by 20% as well, while also giving them all these fat buffs, right? And this is a triple buff for the entire party. Do not be fooled by these 15% values and being like, oh, those are really small. It's like, no, he is triple buffing the entire party. My dude is insane. And then it's just like, oh, the NP's got to do nothing. But then you get to the NP and he's like, nope, divine people are getting choke slammed and I'm reducing their quick resistance so I can hit him even harder on the next NP because he's going to loop his NP. But the only, like, I guess L is that this doesn't activate first. So, like, Taigong is kind of cracked. He's kind of insane. Like, he's borderline. If you have Scotty, you should probably summon for him. If you don't have Scotty, probably can hold off because you won't be able to use him as effectively. But yeah, like there's like Coo Alter and then like Taigong is also pretty nutty, right? Like Taigong is pretty good. Vlad is also really strong if you don't have Galatea, because Vlad and Galatea both basically function as like this general single target servant you can really bring to any fight, because both Vlad and Galatea have just really strong general kits. They don't really rely on a special damage mod or anything. They just have very consistent styles of gameplay. So if you need someone that's just kind of like a generic burst down boss killer and you have Castoria, or even better, you have someone like Tamamo as well, Vlad definitely loves having those people around. Ozymandias is broken. I don't think I need to give Ozymandias the Glug Glug 5000 again. I literally give him the Zuck Zuck 9000 every time he appears in a video. If you need to find out how OP like Ozymandias is, just look at one of like the 50 videos I've made on this guy, because this guy, he just destroys. Like, he is just nutty, right? He's insane. Napoleon, if you don't have Gilgamesh, he's a good alternative, right? He's kind of like a solid AoE buster archer. But if you're going to go for someone, I'd probably go for Tesla over Napoleon, because he has the 50% battery, and that's just going to be a little more useful when it comes to farming, a little bit better when pairing with Koyenskaya, because he has a natural 50% battery, whereas he has a fake 50% battery, which makes him loop just a little bit easier. It's a bit more convenient. But if you want to summon for Napoleon over him, I'm not going to stop you, right? If you're just like, oh, I think Napoleon's cooler, I'm inclined to agree. So I'm not going to stop anybody there. Achilles is just a solid, I think. Okay, I know I've just said this, but it's like Achilles, Odysseus, and Europa kind of, for me, just make up like the really good AoE circle of their different card types, right? Like, Achilles is just a really good, really strong AoE quick rider. Odysseus is the same for arts, and Europa is the same for buster. Like, that's kind of how I view them. They're like the trifecta of just, they're just good. Like, Achilles has pretty much everything he needs, from like the quick buff, the NP gain, the battery, everything. Like, people don't believe me, but like, look at this man. He's packing crazy stuff. Look at this. Nice quick buff. A decent crit damage, but obviously built, made to be run with Scotty, so that's probably why they gave him a little bit of crit damage, but nice that he has it. Solid survivability, lasts for 5 turns, by the way, so if you don't burn this, he'll just have this up all the time. And then look at this, NP gain and an NP gauge. Like, my boy is crazy. I wasn't lying. I wasn't just talking, you know, just blowing smoke up my own butthole over here. Like, this dude is crazy, okay? He's insane. And then you may be able to say that the NP's a little weak, but he has this nice little effect that when he fires the NP, this becomes a mana burst, because 30 plus 20 is 50, if you didn't know. So Achilles is kind of good. Waver. Dog, do I need to talk about Waver? I don't need to talk about Waver. I also don't need to talk about Dioscuri, because this is a servant that I have been religiously just trying to shove down people's throats, because they are such a good servant. Dude, it doesn't matter what else they do. Look at this first skill. Does that look good to anybody? Does that look good to anybody? They basically said, let's just turn our quick cards into arts cards and our arts cards into quick cards as well. So literally, these are all, this is just one big block of card. Like, this is just all one thing right here. Like, it is stupid insane. And while their NP gain, like their natural NP gain, is a little low, first of all, they have 4 hits and then 5 hits over here. Their star gen for a saber is a little high. Like, 10% on a saber is a little nutty. And then they just, come on, bro. Like, come on, dude. Come on, bro. Like, dude, they gave them the Avenger passives, right? Which means, like, they get PP touched and then they explode into a billion NP. They get NP every turn. They have this nonsense that I don't know why they needed that. They're just like, let's just give him insanely high divinity. Like, let's just give him the crack divinity. It's like, bro, they are nuts. And then they have other skills. Like, that's the other thing. The other thing is like, this is crazy, that's crazy, their passives are crazy. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, that's just their first skill. This one, you may be able to complain and be like, well, these are only one turn. It's like, bro, they give party debuff immunity and like a double buff to the entire party at 15%, right? So it's like a crazy tactics that comes with debuff immunity. And then they have this as well. So they're just like, oh, by the way, we should probably buff our card buffs even more. So even though this basically functions as a card buff because it gives them the alternate things, they also just buff them even further. And then they're like, oh, we need some evasion as well. And then, you know, the NP is also just ridiculous. Like, this is just nuts. Like, they didn't need 700 things in their NP. First of all, this means they just literally pierce anybody and just smack them with their NP. Like, they're just dumb, dude. They're just stupid. They're dumb, bro. Like, they're so good. And then you have these bums. You have these bums over here, and then, well, you're not a bum. You're pretty good. You're kind of a bum right now. You need like one more buff. Gawain's not okay. Look, for people that are getting offended, he's not a complete bum. He's like on his road to redemption from being a bum, if that makes sense. And that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. You're definitely a bum right now. Even though I'm really liking you in the AN event right now, you're a bum. You suck. But yeah, I think with that being said, hopefully, I know that just really turned into like Coo Alter good, Ozymandias broken, Waver, duh, and then Dio Scurry twins. And I was just like, these guys are insane. So yeah, you guys better believe when they drop on NA, they're getting like 3 videos or something. I'm gonna figure it out. I don't know. They're gonna get their like initial video. They're getting some comparison video, and then they're gonna get like, is this the best saber that FGO's ever put out? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're just stupid. They're so good. I love them so much. They're so good. But yeah, with all that being said, I hope this helped you guys that are maybe playing on JP, because, you know, if you don't have a JP account, your boy is affiliated with LD Emulator, so you know you can click that link down in the description down below and start playing JP. You'll need APK Pure as well, because what's it called? FGO is it's like not on QuoApp anymore, so you'll need APK Pure to get the JP version of FGO now, because for whatever reason they kicked it off of QuoApp. But yeah, if you're going to be going on the JP version of the game, that's kind of my general advice. I would still say, above all, try to get yourself Arjuna Alter, because he's still on his own banner. Once you get him, you can get whoever else you want, right? That's my general philosophy. Because even though, like, okay, it's going to sound a little blasphemous, and just listen to everything I have to say, I think Arjuna Alter is a little overhyped. Like, not that he's bad, not that I don't think he's an S tier servant, but I think people have this idea that he should be like an S plus servant or something like that, where he's like a whole tier removed from everybody else. I'm like, I don't think he's that insane. Like, I think he's as broken as people like what's his name? Super Orion, right? Like, I think he's as broken as some of these other characters, right? Like, he's in that same level of broken as like a DPS. I don't think he's like a tier or 2 removed from everybody else. I think if people are trying to say that, I think they're smoking crack, or they looked at this Ascension for too long and they were like, bro, they turned him into a femboy BV tuber and they got lost in the sauce. And I think that's what happened. But with all that being said, boys, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Hope to see you guys here, I guess, since this is going up on Saturday, later today. Peace late, guys.